behalf of Praemium, we're very grateful for the opportunity to come and talk today. And I know you've had a number of presentations, and they have all been very much focused from a technical perspective, a technology perspective, because obviously that's what the conference is all about. But really one of the things that we look at, and I particularly look at, is client engagement. And I think it is something that we get a little bit lost when we're talking about financial planning and we're talking about our AFSL, and we are a licensee and we're trying to work through all the compliance. We're an advisor that's stuck in all that compliance environment. And managed accounts obviously and very clearly answers that question. But we are stuck in a little bit of a space, and that is that what value we offer to our clients is like an iceberg. They see only a small amount of what we do on the surface. And all that value that we add is under the surface. And that's actually the majority of the work we do. So what we've got to do, if that's the case, we've got to be very, very careful that the time we spend with our clients and what we do as a technology provider, what the licensee does to support their advisors, and what the advisor is doing with their client means that they've got a small opportunity to demonstrate value because the client sees it in a very finite amount of work that is done and delivered. And we don't do that. As an industry, we don't do it. I spent 3.5 years in the management of an independent national licensee. And when we were looking at the advisor and when we look at what we do, a lot of time is spent on compliance. A lot of time is spent on technology, back office technology. What we didn't spend a huge amount of time on was client engagement. Now, does anybody want to, you've got to help me out just before afternoon tea, and I will be throwing questions at you to help me out, spread out some of this time. What's client engagement? Does anybody want to shout it out?
Attracting and retaining your client.
Yep. Anybody else? It's a shared experience. And that is really, I just want you to think about that before I start the presentation. It's a shared experience. It isn't something that goes on in our office. It isn't a back office experience. And what we've got to do is stay away from trying to be too focused on technology that helps my business and not spending enough time on what's actually going to connect with the client. So this presentation is not going to come up with some amazing technology, and I can't show you because every single advisor's business and every platform and every provider in the managed account space is going to provide different value, different technology solutions. Each client, each advisor is then going to have to choose which platform or which technology offers the best value to them and to their clients. And through that process, there is so much choice that I actually, if I was an advisor today, I was an advisor in the UK for a couple of years, and back then it was paper. We didn't have mobile phones or anything. So, and in fact, when I first joined the industry, I was a BDM, and we used to get our post in the mail overnight in a bag, and you used to have to then type it up and send it back again. So things have changed rapidly, but we need to be aware of what that means to us, what it means to the client, and how we are going to change that interaction. So when you look at what we do, I just want to give you a little bit of brief about Praemium. I don't know anyone's familiarity with Praemium itself. Very, very quick snapshot. We've been around since 2001. We run or manage, administer $110 billion worth of assets. $7 billion of those are SMA custodial assets. We do business with large institutions, large stockbroking firms. We do the Credit Suisse, Morgan Stanley's. We do a lot of business with accountants still, and we do a lot of business with high-end IFAs. We have 800 firms that we do business with, and we run an enormous amount of reports through our system. We first launched into the market as a non-custodial reporting tool. The service is the technology, and a lot of our older clients use our technology for our reporting, and we do tax, holdings report, so taxation reporting, holding reporting, performance reporting. And through that process, it's all non-custodial. And then we pioneered the first SMA in Australia with BlackRock, so it was BlackRock's SMA, and then subsequently when they wanted to move out of the RE custodial component, we bought it back. So we've pioneered this opportunity. We have, through the reporting tool, we have more than 30 reports, more than 200 customizable options. Now, that's not necessarily a sell moment. Of course, I'm a BDM from sales, so I'll use every opportunity. But even that shows the complexity of what our system does. Is not easy to choose. If I'm an advisor, what do I do? Which of those 30-odd reports is going to be right for my client? Which of the customizable options are going to be right? And I would, without being rude to our clients, would argue that no one spends that much time on it. No one actually spends much time talking to the client around, what are you getting from us? Is it correct? Can I do this better? What sort of clients have I got? What sort of clients do I want? What's the changing demographic? And having a look at that and truly harnessing that opportunity of technology. And I think we've got that as a problem in our industry, is that we offer an enormous amount of technology and we use a very, very small component of it. And the bit that we're using isn't necessarily the most effective. And what I want to do today is just take us through some of the reasons why I think we should be spending more time on client engagement. So there are 3 stakeholders in the success of managed accounts. There is the advisor's practice. There is the model manager, and then there is the client. And what we see and what you see in the press and we talk about, and a lot of the FinTechs and a lot of the technology that's out there, it will address the advisor's back office, it will address the model manager, and it can address the client experience. But what I want to do is just push you back to this client. All the time, go back to the client. Remember the iceberg. And when we look at that approach and see the words on the screen, is it an evolution or a revolution? The word disruption is a misnomer. I'd urge you to read a report by someone called Rita King called CEO, or Disruption is Not Your Worst Enemy, CEO. And what it states is that there's no such thing as disruption. Disruption, I worked for Scandia when they first launched into Australia. That was disruption, because all we did was we went out with a different version of the same thing. We went out with a product that was cheaper, and everyone said, you can't be that cheap, something must be going on. And we were that cheap, and we were able to disrupt, and it made some changes to the platform industry. It did not disrupt something new. So what a lot of the FinTechs are doing is they're introducing something that the clients need, that is a change. The way the banking environment, that isn't disruption to the banking sector per se. What that is innovation. That is growth. That is the development of a new market. That is a new way of doing business. Disruption is actually about disrupting a current way of doing business. But think about disruption in our industry and what's happening, and we're actually letting our clients move further and further away from us because what we're not doing is addressing their changing needs. And that's what this slide is really trying to talk about, is we've actually had an enormous change in advice. So who was here when FSR was introduced, SOAs? It was the worst thing that happened to this industry. Not from a compliance perspective, it started to break the client-advisor relationship. Advisors had less time. All of a sudden, you got 10 hours you were using previously to interact with the client and do whatever you were doing, to then be actually taken away, and now what you've got to do is spend that on SOAs. And with that process, what we ended up doing was we launched a practice management environment. And I was one of those supporters. We did a lot of practice management at Scandia, and then I went off and started my own consulting firm. Practice management creates tools to allow a business to run efficiently. It doesn't really talk about client engagement. You might have some marketing components to it, but the main focus of it is, how do we get around charging the same amount of money and actually losing that 10 hours or 15 hours that we've now got in our business? And when I was at Scandia, we did with brand management with Andrew Inwood, a focus group with pre and post retirees. And it was all just supposed to be about how they interact, what they think about their advisor. But it came out of it a really great result, and brand management's now called data. And it came out of it as the trust cycle. And advisor practices have 6 stages they go through with their client, just generically from a practice management. They've got to find the client, you've got the discovery phase, you go away, you do your research, create the SOA, present it, you implement it, and then you review it, ongoing. A client has 13 stages of emotion that they go through that process. And that that 13 stages of emotion is how much do they trust you. And this is the compelling fact, of those clients that went through that process, how many clients, or what percentage of clients do you think that had a relationship with their client that was their advisor was 2 years or less? What percentage do you think said that they would go and find another advisor if it was placed in front of them? Or choose another advisor if it was placed in front of them? 66%. It is a scary, scary statistic. And what I would challenge is I'm not actually sure, and I don't mean to insult any advisor in the room, I'm not sure that our advice models have changed significantly in the way we interact with clients. Technology is significantly changing how we run our business. If you actually sat down and mapped what is the interaction that if I was in business 10 years ago, or looked at the average practice, so I was in business 10 years ago, and said, how did I interact with my clients? How many times did I see them? What type of things did they get from me? What did I discuss in my meeting? And you ask them to look back 10 years and look now. If you map that to the significant change in technology, I'd argue it hasn't kept pace. And just by an intuitive mathematical equation means that our clients are moving slowly and slowly away from us, but it's like a slow burning death. And they're moving. The demographics are moving, and the clients are changing, and we've got to move with them. So this old advice model, this process that we follow, just really hasn't kept up with what we're trying to achieve in the market. So look at technology changing. Where we are with the internet. These figures, I won't necessarily read them out, but 3.9 billion people are now on the internet. 17 million people out of 24 million use Facebook. And if you think about when Facebook, if you look a decade ago, older people were like, nah, I'm not using Facebook, that's silly. 76% of older people use Facebook to communicate with their children, with their grandchildren while they're away. My parents are in the UK. I have no family in Australia. No one came. No one followed me here. So I have to fly home all the time. But I went home when my dad was poorly. And I had my son at the time was 3 years old. And he had not seen my mum since he was 10 months old. And there's no way he remembers my mum's interaction at 10 months old. So he'd only had a digital relationship with my mum. He'd only had a social media experience. We're in the hospital. All of a sudden, me and my wife turn around and Flynn's disappeared. Disappeared into Hull Hospital, into the crowds. Next salute, we're worried. He comes back with my mum's hand, holding my mum's hand. And he has as much of a relationship with my mum through social media than somebody would have in a normal basis. And that's because these consumers are changing. These people, and of course he was only 3 back then, but he's now 9. And if you think the millennials are an issue, the oldest millennial is 37 years old. And I was at a conference not that long ago where we were talking about whether or not we should be engaging millennials. And the oldest is 37. Honestly, our consumer, in my opinion, is leaving us a little bit behind because we're so focused. Managed accounts, without a doubt, has business benefits. But what we've got to not lose sight of is what are we doing for our customer? How are we solving problems? How are we communicating? How are we connecting? 2009, ASIC did a report that said only 20% of the investable community or the population use an advisor. How much do you reckon that's changed? Not. That figure has not gone up by any other drastic way. So that means that the same clients are walking around to different advisors, changing advisors. If people are picking up new clients, they're generically not new clients. They might be old clients. They've seen somebody else and they're taking on an existing relationship. So for all that technology change and all that Managed Accounts is doing, all the technology that Praemium and everybody else develops, we aren't seeing a fundamental change in the amount of consumers that see us as a profession. We aren't seeing a massive amount of change in our referral networks. We aren't seeing a massive amount of change in the amount of consumers that see us as a profession. We aren't seeing a massive amount of change in the amount of consumers that see us as a profession. We aren't seeing a massive amount of change in our referral networks. We aren't seeing a massive amount of change in our referral networks. And this is a really, really worrying statistic. 40% of people prefer self-service over human contact. Now, in the internet in a year, how much information, there's a zettabyte, I think it's called, 1.1 zettabyte of information. How many years of high-definition DVD do you reckon that would be? 39,000 years of information. That is Netflix 3,000, whole portfolio 3,000 times over. And more you're seeing self-education, you're seeing video posts, you're seeing our industry, seeing advisors sitting in their cars coming back from the gym giving financial advice or giving some sort of prompt into the market. But the clients are going, I am not handy, I have office hands. I get a blister when I have to actually sweep the backyard or do the mowing, so I put special gloves on so I don't damage my hands. But when I stupidly reversed into a wall, I had no idea how to fix my light at the back of my car. I went on the internet, went, how do I do that? Typed in, how do I fix Audi light? And I fixed it. I was very proud of myself. My wife she thought I was a bit of an idiot, but I think she wants a man who could have fixed it without a video. But anyway, I fixed it. Now, that is not that far away from clients and robo-advice and all of those actually doing this. So the FPA, I was at the FPA conference last week. God, it's been a long year. Last week. And they've done a great white paper. Really, really great. If you haven't seen it, you should go and see it, right? And they mapped the FinTechs in Australia. And there's 117 FinTechs in Australia that can help in the advice process. 54 of them are in competition with the advisor. 30 of them can be embedded into the advisor's website. And 3% of advisors are using some form of automated advice process. Now, robo-advice, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't really matter. Automated advice is coming. We have to find ways to automate our advice process. But what we should be doing is looking at incremental change so that these clients on here, the 40% who prefer self-service and want to solve their own problems, I know advisors who still don't have a website, or they've got a website that looks like a flyer. And we're not looking at ways to engage those clients. And that 37-year-old, the millennial who's 37, they want to go online and engage. They don't want to have to phone the advisor every 5 minutes. They want to go and do a bit of research. They want to go and get some information, and they want it easy. And it doesn't have to be difficult. And I'm not saying that from an advisor's perspective, we're trying to turn advisors into tech-savvy gurus, because, as I said earlier, I wouldn't like to be an advisor because it'd be like staring up Mount Everest. You go to a conference, for example, in a PD day, and for 3 days you'll get young whippersnappers, I'll just call myself a young whippersnapper, other young whippersnappers, 47, I'm not young anymore, coming up and telling you how you should run your business. And they'll come up and give you a marketing demo, and they'll do other bits and pieces, and you sit there. And I think a lot of advisors just get frozen in fear, because at the start they get very invigorated, and by the end of it they're like, where do I start? They go back to the business and go, right, next month or after Christmas I'm going to start this process. And they're fearful, and end up basically frozen into making action. So I understand, and it's difficult, but we've got to start making incremental change to this process. And because of that, we've got to look at what's happening to us right now. So 25% of the population are baby boomers, right? By 2025, 75% of the workforce are going to be millennials. My nine-year-old son has to have a laptop to go to school next year, and because they're doing digital experience, and I have to sign a digital waiver about what they're going to do, and I have to support his digital education. It's fantastic. Come and learn about Praemium, buddy. And it's a difficult one, because I actually fundamentally don't agree with it. Right? I don't agree with it. I think it's too early. I think we've got to be communicating, and I don't think that sitting in front of a laptop's the right way to do it. But that's just, I am old-fashioned in that way from a schooling perspective, because I think he's too young. But the reality is, you give him an iPad, he's gone. He's sitting there doing Minecraft, he's building cities. That digital, it's only a decade away before he's 19, and he's not that far away before he's 25. And it has an implication, and the biggest implication is the baby boomers. They're all on their way out, not soon, hopefully, but they'll be on their way out. Biggest intergenerational wealth transfer in history, because they have 55% of the wealth. And what we've got to do, and we talk about this as an industry a lot, how do we get intergenerational wealth transfer? And I want my children, I want to do something, I want my clients' children. Well, build a business model that's actually attractive to them. Find a technology that can access this client base. Let's find ways in we can communicate. Let's look at technology that can enhance and enrich that experience. So this was a Forbes report in 2001. And one of the things I just want to actually do here is give you 3 things to show you how easy it is to be innovative. So of these companies, of these companies in 2011, things changed. There are other companies here. These are just brand names. What do you think are the key things that would actually make these guys innovative? Pardon? Threats. Forcing them to be innovative. Culture. That's actually a good one. Hold on to that one. Not the other one wasn't, by the way. Sorry. Come on. People. Close. I'll tell you. So who said that? Odd. Customers. Engagement with customers. Right? That's it. It's not about money. It's not about tech. It's 3 core things. Am I finished already? 5 minutes? There's 19 on there. Okay. An ability to gain insight into customers' needs. Surveys. I'll give you an insight. When I was at Capstone, we did surveys for advisors. They were just average. They were good advisors. There's nothing wrong with those as advisors. But of those advisors, when we did surveys, there was always a high yes, we like you rate. When you then went in and said, would you refer for us? 40% of clients would say yes. Single digits said they did in the last 12 months. So there wasn't the proper engagement in insight from a customer needs, because we send surveys out to get the answers we want, because we're not truly engaging them. An ability to engage actively with customers to prove the validity of concepts. So it's working with people. And an ability to pilot users. That's all people. That's the customer. It's engaging with the customer, talking, finding points, doing things like when you're doing marketing, people send newsletters out, but nobody then actually researches the newsletter, doesn't set up marketing tools that allow you to say, who got my newsletter? Did they open it? Did they refer it? Which bits of the newsletter did they open? And start finding really simple tools to engage with our clients. We'll all have seen this, the growth of the FinTech sector. I'm going to run like 100 miles an hour now. It's enormous. It is massive. But I go back to what I was saying. There's 117 FinTechs that help in the advice process. 54 of them are actually in competition with the advice sector, and 30 of them can be embedded onto someone's website. But we're not seeing full engagement. And in fact, a lot of them are still very much about building efficiencies in a practice. But as an industry, if we're not solving that age-old problem of making more people go and find financial advice and finding tools to engage them, what we do as a business and what we do as an industry means as a profession, we continue to not grow. The accounting sector is the biggest sector that's going to be affected by automation, according to PwC. Well, we've got to ask ourselves as a profession, are we at risk of being left behind by our clients because we're spending so much time internalising and not enough time actually engaging the client and finding tools that can help them? Because, of course, everything we talk about, and the panel here was talking about portfolio construction and cost efficiencies. But the question comes back down to, does the client understand that? We've got to have education as well as everything else in this process. So, I think I've spoken about this to death, which is, it's not just a business solution, it's enhanced in client engagement. If we're not enhancing that process, if we're not helping our clients engage, we're a little bit lost. I just want to, please bear with me, because I am in sales. Whoops. I'll talk to this while it's playing, just to give you some insights into us. We spend a lot of time on our investor portal, and please, it isn't a sales tongue-in-cheek, it's not a sales. But what I'm talking about with this process is that we spend a lot of time on connectivity. We talk about the website, we talk about the investor portal, and it's about trying to provide education and a rich environment that allows the client to play with their portfolio, to have a look at it. We provide tools that the advisor goes, when he's talking to or she's talking to their client, that they can go in, and when they're talking in real time to the client, they log on to their investor portal and they say, what tool are you on? You're on your laptop? Are you on an iPad? Or are you on your phone? And they can drag the screen across and get exactly the same view, so that when they're talking to the client, they're talking in real time. We're looking at trying to give education about the portfolio, because you can't, if the advisor is looking to not become the portfolio manager and not spend all that time with the client on portfolio construction, the one thing that they've got to do is ensure that the client is educated enough that when they get to the 12-month review, the quarterly review, that they're comfortable that that portfolio is being run correctly, that they've got access to information. Clients want more control, they want more transparency, they want more access. So if we're doing that, we must be doing that on a day-by-day basis. Otherwise, we've lost the opportunity with our client. And at the end, we do save all this time during the year, but actually the interaction with our client doesn't change, because we're still spending time in our review meeting talking about portfolio construction and what happened and what was the performance. So it's finding tools that can build that, can reduce that process. So very quickly, what does the digitally connected client look like? Who knows? The older client used to be not digitally connected. They definitely are now. They're all going to be around the proverbial campfire with their big Winnebagos talking. And they're going to say, what does my advisor do? Where'd you get your access to information? They're flying off around the country communicating. They want access to information. They didn't previously. 10 years ago, it was correct. My clients don't have email. My clients don't go on Facebook. Rubbish. You've then got millennials. They're not young anymore. And then you've got this new generation coming out that should scare everybody to death. So on that basis, I'll end. I've just done nothing but abuse everybody, and I apologise. No solutions, except because I think the solutions are very unique. And I showed some at Praemium, and of course we offer some, but they're not right for everybody. But for everyone, we should be doing is trying to make our percentage of our population get more financial advice. And that comes through client engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Well, you haven't helped the English team in the last 20 minutes.
I don't even like cricket, so that's all right.
But I mean, I hear everything you're saying, and I use Acorns. And Acorns send me out a text message every day to tell me how my portfolio is going. Why don't we see that level of engagement going? It's very simple to do.
Yeah, I think that most of the technology that's been built in Australia was built to solve a business need, not a client need. Acorns was built to solve a client need. And I think that's what this new FinTech success stories are about, is that they're actually designed to solve client problems first. They're not solving a business solution. So, and that's a generation that we've got, that's what we've got to change. And it's hard to change because we've got legacy systems, we've got technology that was built. So I think what we've just got to do is look at that technology and look at how we interact with other technologies through API to bridge the gap to the consumer and create greater connectivity.
Yeah, yeah. Do we have any questions for Martin before we take a break? Holding up the break?
I won't be insulted. It's okay. There's one over there.
How are you seeing the means of client communication change over time? Is video becoming more prevalent? Is video the sort of thing that a lot of the end clients are wanting to consume? Or is written still the primary distribution sort of method? What are you seeing in the engagement that you're having?
Yeah, I think it, to be truthful, it's a blend of the two. But I think what's happening is that whole concept around, technology engagement sweet box, just at an admin perspective and documentation, is driving this change in terms that there are more advisors now very happy to do social media engagement. At the FBA conference, there was an advisor who got up to do a presentation who started her business in Australia, has moved to Germany, and still has the same client base. And her clients don't care. And they're all pre-retirees and post-retirees, because as long as they've got her, it doesn't matter. So she comes over however often she comes over, but the rest of the time it's a social media relationship. And I think what's happening is that there is a change that the clients that are really engaged, the clients that can go and get that information in terms of video. You can have death by video, without a doubt, but at the same time, I think if you're doing for example, you're sending out your quarterly updates, why can't you sit and video yourself talking about it, rather than just sending in a video? I know people don't like videos, but you just have to, or don't always like being themselves on video. You don't have to re-watch it. People don't see the angst that you see. So I think that is changing, and I think it's actually changing more in other industries, to be truthful, but I think you're seeing more and more engagement on that basis in Australia, and I think that it's not right when our industry believes it doesn't work, because it does work, and my son's a good example, and that example of that advisor is a very good example. Hence, she was on the podium at the FPA conference.
You can now get your Telstra bill every month as a video.
Yeah. Can you? I didn't know that.
And what about live chat? I mean, again, I haven't seen any firm that offers their customers to just get online and ask a question.
Yeah. I think that's, again, because the trust cycle, when you see a pop-up and it says, do you need any help now? I think our clients aren't used to that yet. And I think that's actually can be a bit intrusive when someone goes in and all of a sudden, oh, do you need any help? No. But I think that stuff will come when you've got a more digital relationship. I think we still have, and I think it's right, that we have more of a human interaction, where if someone wants to talk, they can just pick up the phone. So I think that we're a bit away from that.
Any more questions? All right, that's it, Martin.
Thank you very much.
We're now going to take a break.